ourselves. We all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hey everybody, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here at Black Star Network. Each and every week, we're bringing you content, communication, dialogue, ways to engage with yourself and others as it relates to how to live a balanced life. Of course, we know living a balanced life isn't easy because there are so many things that are consistently jockeying for position in our lives. But today, we're going to spend a little time talking about what it means to balance our behaviors. As we are moving about in our spaces, as we're headed out to the grocery store, time at the salon, going to look at houses, cars, shopping, even spending time in our social organizations, we are discovering that maybe we stepped out just a little bit too soon. I have to tell you, during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time by myself, so I got to know me better. So I'm hoping that as we communicate and talk, that you'll be able to discover some things about yourself that say, I'm really ready to get out and about. I'm prepared to start being more social. I have, a little bit of capacity, now to do more. I didn't say go out and be extra. I said go out and do more. Today, I am joined with our subject matter experts, Dr. Tierney and Stacey Owens, who are going to talk to us about all these various stages of growth and development that help us move into adulthood a little seamlessly. Hey, ladies.
Hey, Dr. Jacquie.
I'm excited that you guys are here because as we talk about attitude and behavior, one of the phrases that I have to admit I need to stop saying is y'all need to grow up. Because sometimes, how our petty ways just kind of kick in when we seemingly thought that we maybe have left them behind or closed the door to a subject. Oftentimes, Petty Patty has a way of kicking in. And I want to start with Dr. Tierney as we talk about some of our petty ways. Talk to us, Dr. T.
You want me to tell my petty ways?
Oh, you have some petty ways.
You give me some.
Here we go.
Which one I want to pull out? So I like to sometimes call myself Petty Betty. And I have to check Petty Betty, sometimes because a lot of times the thing that gets me in trouble is my pettiness. This right here. So somebody might say something slick and I always got a petty comeback, a slicing comeback. And so I have to check my mouth because my mouth is where I will get real petty, real fast, and the reason I had to check it is because I recognize like when I was younger, I was always that friend that everybody would say, hey, call Sprint for me. And, because they did this with my cell phone bill or call these people, and by the time I got done, you had free minutes, you had, some extra stuff because this was just slice and dice, like no other. And so I had to recognize like that is not the way. It's a gift of mine, clearly, it's a gift of mine, but I was using it in the wrong way. And so sometimes when that wrong way wants to come out, it wants to come out in a petty, slicing, kind of cutting type of way. So I have to like check my mouth and be like, Petty Betty, shut up.
Petty Betty, we're going to put her on pause. All right, Stacey.
I mean, I think everybody has a little bit of petty in them, It's just how do you utilize it? Do you utilize it to hurt others? Do you utilize it for self-satisfaction or self-gain? Or do you utilize it because, you feel like your ego's been tattered and torn a little bit? So I'm like Dr. Tierney. You got to just keep checking in with yourself to say, why am I being petty at this moment? And I think it's something that you have to grow from because, I can remember in my younger years, well, let me go closer than that. I can remember Stacey maybe even last year. That if you did things It could be something simple that just sort of was nagging or aggravating to me, and I wanted to just give it back to you in a petty way. It would be quick for me to just go and quickly throw something at you, just being petty. It didn't even really matter. It was just you was on my nerve, and I wanted to get you off my nerve. So I think pettiness is something that we all carry. It's just make sure that you carry it well and you don't use it to intentionally hurt.
Now, you both bring up something very interesting because sometimes pettiness turns into payback. And I think that's where we see these behaviors from when we were younger. We were allowed to get away with things and they sort of carry over, if you will, into our teenage years, into our young adulthood and into adulthood. How do you keep pettiness from becoming payback?
I think you have to know, I think you have to adjust with yourself and get to the point where you stop letting stuff bother you. I think that's one of my biggest lessons that I had to learn is that the more, in those moments that I didn't know myself and I didn't know who I was, then I allowed things that people said to bother me. And then it made me feel like I had to get you back because I was bothered. But now as I'm growing and learning more about me and I'm more comfortable in my skin, now I can let you say and do things to me that I can find another way of dealing with it. Just ignore you or just don't even have any care or thought in the world about what you're saying. So now I don't have to be petty to get you back. So,
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. So you took it back to the younger years and some of these behaviors or these tendencies and patterns that we see now playing out as adults, they absolutely do start in our younger, years. And so the thing with my mouth, it started definitely when I was, a child, and my aunt, the aunt that I was just talking about last episode, she had this way of whenever I would do something or say something, if, to an adult sometimes, and just my ignorance and not, not knowing whatever came up, came out, or even to my younger cousins, she would sit me down and ask me, why did you do that? Why did you say that? Or what did that make you feel? To start that process of me being more introspective, instead of just external and this is what I did because I did it. Or, she would stop me and say, okay, well, how do you think that made them feel? And so she made me first think about what I felt and then to think about what the other person, felt. And so doing that introspective work very early on, before I even understood what introspective was, that carried over into my adulthood, so that when the pettiness wants to come up, I can almost hear my aunt saying, okay, what are you feeling? Why are you thinking that? What is going on, and how would that make that other person feel, or what damage could that ultimately do to the relationship, to the friendship, or to the business deal, or whatever, it is. So that's how we kind of can curtail some of that pettiness. It's just by being more introspective.
When you both talk about the things that you've stated, something that popped to me was naivete. And oftentimes people are just naive as to when they're being taken advantage of, when they're popping off at the mouth. At what age does that no longer become acceptable? I mean, some people are just naive because they've been sheltered all of their lives. They're just things that they do not know. But there are other times I think that I've seen people use that as a way to be manipulative. Talk for a minute about naivete and the role that it plays in helping us mature. Stacey.
Oh man, I was going to say, can we put a number on that? Because I've seen some pretty older adults that are still very naive. And I think it comes from a little bit from experiences and a lot from, did you learn how to regulate your emotions? And did you learn how to tap into just learning how to be social with others? So I think it starts with the experiences and the environment that you come from. I don't know if I would put a number on it because, man, I still see some 50-year-olds that's still pretty naive if you haven't done your self-work.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing. I don't know if there's an age where we would say, okay, this is where it stops or starts, But in addition to what Stacey was saying, I would add, what is your responsibility level? There was something that my mom used to always say, if you want this level of responsibility, then you got to come to the table correct. You got to pay the cost to be the boss,
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about, different levels of leadership, different levels of responsibility, if you're trying to get that promotion on your job and you want to be the supervisor or the manager over a team, then some of that naivety that you may have, about life, work environments, you can't hold on to that and then be an effective leader. So along with exactly what Stacey said, we have to also look at our responsibility level, and that be an indicator of, okay, when it's time to grow out of those, things like the Bible said, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spake as a child, I act as a child. But when I became a man or a woman, I let go of childish things. As you get that responsibility level, that maturity level, you have to let go of those childish things, that naivety.
When we come back after the break, I want to talk about those things for just a moment, because not only do people find themselves in situations, of being naive, they also find themselves in situations of being vulnerable. And oftentimes our stages of development, our psychological maturity, our physical maturity don't always match up. I know I can hear you guys saying this. They act like they're 15, but they're 35. She acts like she's 21, but she's only 12. There are times in our lives where we grow into stages because of life and experiences. When we come back, we'll talk about how do life experiences challenge us to hone into proper behavior, but then begin to let go of other behavior. We'll be back after the break.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And we're talking about what it looks like to balance behavior. Oftentimes, we let our children do whatever they want because honestly, parents are afraid of their children. They're afraid that they'll yell, they'll kick, they'll scream, and there are even children that fight back. And so with that, we want to make certain that we're in this space that as adults, we're able to not only check other people, but be able to call out behaviors that are not appropriate in various settings, allowing ourselves to really establish a baseline community-wise, culturally, to say that at a certain age and stage of growth and development, we should be seeing certain things. I want to bring our guests back in because as we're engaging in this conversation, I identify and recognize that, we usually say that when a person is 18 years old, we consider them to be grown. But at the end of the day, they're not fully equipped for the ways of this world. Stacey, talk to us a little bit about stages of growth and development and when you start to see signs of readiness in elementary and middle school and then high school kids.
Again, those ages and stages comes with experiences. I can see some elementary kids. I can go down there right now and pull some of my kindergartners who act just like old women. It's like they've been here before, And you can tell that they're heavily influenced by their grandmothers in the home and so forth, and life experiences. I have some middle school children who have been put in the role of the parent. And so because of that parentification, they have learned and seen more than they should have at the age that they've seen it. And so they are pretty much, they can raise a child, take a job, and do whatever, because their life circumstances have put them in that position to have to step into the place or role of someone else's. And so, it made them learn things a little faster. And then I can go find you a third grader who parent don't let them do nothing, don't let them eat, drink, everything. They hold their hand to do everything to do. And so when it comes time to think, they may not be meeting the learning targets or the developmental targets that they should be at, because someone is holding on to them for their personal whatever reasons. And then I can take it personal to my son. I mean, my son was misunderstood when he was younger. He's 30 now, but he was labeled with ADHD and all those kind of things. And his executive frontal part of his brain matured much slower. So now as a 30-year-old man, he's getting ready to graduate from college in a couple of weeks. But he was one at 18 where my daughter was able to go to college and do everything on her own. He struggled with that. He wasn't, developmentally ready for it. It took him a little longer and a little harder to learn those life lessons. What kept him above water, though, is the structure that was provided, along with allowing him to take a couple of hard hits so he can be bumped back into place. But then keeping, your arms around him enough so that he didn't go too far to the left. And so now you can see him growing into that manhood. So really, it just depends on life circumstances and what is around your table that can help you move through your developmental stages. It definitely don't always fit the way the psychologists and all have made those nice little fancy charts that say you should be doing this by the age of 2 and 3 and 4. That don't always work in some cultures.
I think you bring up an excellent point, because oftentimes we do have to kind of go off script. Some people, live by the book. What did the TV person say? Let me call WebMD, this, that, and the other. And sometimes we have to just step back and look at our own life situations and say, how do I balance the space that I live in? Dr. Tierney, talk to us.
So one of the things that, as you were talking, that really came to the forefront, something that I see a lot with parents with small children, when they'll do little things or snatch, their friends' toys, or, these little antics, the parents, oh, is that cute? Oh, that's so cute. No, that's not cute. That's not cute at all. So a lot of the things that we're seeing very early in children, a lot of times we'll think like, oh, that's just cute. Oh, they just a baby. Oh, and that's not just not enough. No, it needs to be addressed, right then when you're starting to see these patterns of the selfishness, of the pettiness. We have to address those things and not just say that they are cute just because it's in a little person. Because remember, that little person is going to then turn into a big person that's still petty, that's still selfish, that's not compassionate, that want to cuss everybody else out when they don't get their way, that's still going to throw tantrums on a bigger scale, So when we see those things happening in youth, and my grandmother actually had this thing where she had a lot of she still does, has knickknacks, on her tables. And when someone would come over, my aunt or uncle with their new baby, and the baby's a toddler and want to start doing the reaching, my grandmother did not move not one knickknack off of her table. She did not, well, granted, this was some in the 80s, so child in the house wasn't really a thing back then, but you know where I'm going with this. But she did not just overly childproof the house, because in her method was, you can train that child to know what to touch, what not to touch, where to go, where not to go. If you overly baby-proof the house and overly, then how are you training them? Then they have to then live a life where you're constantly making it smoothing the way for them. You're constantly making a way for them to not touch the things, instead of training them to have some sense of self-control. And that's really what it comes down to, the self-control. When are we teaching our children to start exercising some self-control? And if you're starting to teach that lesson at 10, 11, 12, Sugar, that's too late. You know, that lesson starts early when little Jimmy and little Susan want to start reaching for the knick-knack on the table, you know, helping them to understand that you can't have everything that you want and everything is not cute.
No, you bring up a valid point, because a lot of times the outgrowth of that is respect for self, respect for other people's property and other people's things. And even as an adult, I have stopped going to the grocery store. I have my groceries delivered, not because I'm bougie, but because the words, excuse me, I need to get past you, on your left, I'm right behind you, you know, running over my heel with the cart. There's certain words in all communities that are no longer spoken. And it reminds me in this dialogue that we're having today that there just wasn't a lot of balance in the nurturing and the developmental stages of some people who just really don't care whether or not they're in your physical space. I know that books talk about you need to be, you know, a couple of, 2 feet in whatever. You shouldn't be right here, you know, in someone's space when you're talking. But oftentimes we don't carry over habits, behaviors in all places. The same way we talk to each other, you know, in the park is not the same way we communicate with each other at the water cooler. How do we help community understand respect of space? Because I think that's a part of behavior that gets challenged a lot. And then people get irritated, like, ooh, why are you up on me like that? And we hear all of these types of conversations in various environments. And we often wonder what triggered the response, but also what enacted the behavior.
I think, if I can jump in here, I think it comes back to that sense of entitlement and selfishness and self-centeredness. You know, if going back to the example I gave with my aunt, you know, after she had me walking through, okay, what made you say that? What were you feeling? Now think about the other person. What are they feeling? What are they, you know? And so we live in a society where everything is me, I, mine, you know? And so again, if we're taking it back to childhood, we don't have to teach children to be selfish. You know, you surely didn't have to teach me to be selfish. I'm an only child. So I was quick to say mine, no, gimme, you know. And so if we're not being intentional of teaching our children, our teenagers, our adolescents to be mindful of other people that are in our community, that other people matter, you know, what are their feelings, what are their experiences, and we're totally being self-centered and selfish in our way of how we view the world, then of course, when I'm in the grocery store, you're in the way of me getting my green beans off of this shelf. You know, and so I'm not thinking about how me being in your space is going to make you feel, or me running into you with the cart is going to injure your heel. I'm not thinking about you. And so that's what we're seeing a lot of, you know, now, of the adults that are still stuck in those selfish tantrum tendencies that developed as children.
I want to add on to that, because, you know, you brought up a topic when we were talking about tantrums and how your aunt or your grandmother didn't, you know, move anything. I think part of that entitlement too is when we are specific about teaching people how to recognize their feelings and then regulate their feelings within themselves, and not expect for somebody else to do the regulating for you. Because as an adult, what those tantrums become is rageful.
Yes.
That emotional outburst. They start having those meltdowns, even if it's a silent meltdown where you're stomping and pouting and ranting and raving and insulting people. And you see a lot of that going on in a lot of the videos and stuff that's being, you know, displayed through social media. And you're like, well, why are you there? What made you so upset that put you to the point where you had to go into a full out adult emotional meltdown? And so I think the lacking of teaching people that it's your responsibility to self-regulate, because nobody owes you nothing. And then on the flip side of that, you know, being able to confront, like, you know, I'm the queen of confrontation. Like, I'm gonna take all the smoke, and not in a negative way. But if you come to me with some madness, then I have a responsibility to try to talk to you or say something to you about how you're impacting me. We just don't need to brush over some stuff. But of course, when they're in the rage mode, you can't really engage in those moments. But if you're close enough to my circle and I'm gonna see you again, I need to let you know that wasn't cool and how we need to move forward with that.
Absolutely.
I love this. So when we come back after the break, I want us to talk about that. We're going to dive into how do we manage the ranting, the raving, and the releasing, because each of those three things are different. And if we're going to heal from the hurt that other people have brought onto us by themselves not being emotionally balanced, by us not being in a mature space, then we really need to talk about how do we balance our emotions in order for us to have appropriate attitude and behavior wherever it is we find ourselves when we're back after the break.
These are the only bins that will accommodate larger rollerboards.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you eat 10.
Oh my God. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can tell, Petty Betty, Petty Patty, and all her friends have come to the place in life where they're able to say, I identify me as an individual who is growing, who is maturing, who's looking, as Dr. Tierney would say, leveling up my attitude and my behavior as it relates to how I engage with other people, how I approach situations and circumstances in my life. Ladies, let's talk about that for a moment, because the ranting, the raving, the raging is all a part of releasing, but there's a way to do that where it's not toxic. Let's talk about toxicity for a moment, because there are some times where we have to really be able to say, I need to mature. I need to level up in my attitude. I need to level up in how I approach things. Dr. Tierney, share with us, what does it look like to be able to release ourselves from those things that have hemmed us up, that literally people have stepped on my heels, people have talked to me crazy, I've been irritated all day. How do I get myself back to balance?
First thing is just to focus on self. A lot of times we get stuck because we're overly focused on what they did. What they said, what they did, how they did it, they came to me, how dare they. We need to take our eyes off of them and put them onto ourselves. First and foremost, through the process of forgiveness. We have to forgive them. We have to release them from whatever it is that they did, so that not for them. This is not a past. This does not make what they did okay. This does not excuse them at all. By forgiving them, you are giving yourself the gift of freedom. so that you're not replaying and reliving everything that they did over and over and over again in your head, because they are taking up space in your head and your heart that's keeping you from moving forward, that's keeping you raging, that's keeping you ranting, all because of what they did. So the first thing we have to do is release them, forgive them. Then we have to look at, okay, what is it that I want to feel? How do I want my days to go? What is it that I want to do or to manifest in my life? That's where you then put your focus there and look at, okay, what behaviors are conducive to that and what behaviors are holding me back from that, so it's at that place where you get to see, okay, when I rant and rave and go into a rage and all of those things, some of the people that I actually want to have in my life, some of the good opportunities that I want to see manifest in my life, those behaviors are actually pushing them away from me. Because ultimately, if you rant and rage and do all of that, that's your prerogative. But it is also my prerogative to decide how I want to interact with you at that point. It's that job's prerogative to decide if you are still an employee, so you have to take ownership of that, let go of who did what and said whatever, forgive them, release them, focus on you, focus on your healing and what it is that you want to see manifest in your life, and then address those things that are not conducive to that and start implementing some things that are conducive to that.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. How do you do that without being judgy?
Judgy. Okay. You don't have to judge the person. So let's take it back to what I was saying about releasing and forgiving the other people. I don't have to judge the person and stand in judgment and well, they said and they did. I don't have to do that in order for me to be whole. I don't have to judge. And when we judge, we sit in that seat where we say what they did was wrong, bad, good. We take the gavel in our hands and we make an assessment of their actions. You don't have to assess their actions in order for you to do what it is that you need to do for you. So we don't have to judge them in order for us to move forward. Now, often that happens because we are still sitting and looking at them and putting the focus on them. And we want to talk about them and we want to, how could they do that to me? Because there's some sort of retribution that we find when we do that. But we don't have to judge them in order for us to do what it is that we need to do. And even in you doing what you need to do for you, you don't have to say anything to them about it. You don't have to go to them and be like, you know what, now see, because you said it. So now we don't have to get the get back or the clap back or any of that, because all of that kind of sits around or in the peripherals of the judgment, so I may not be judging you, but I'm going to let you know sometimes it's best that you just keep it moving and keep it pushing, now, like my sister Stacy said, if this is something that needs to be addressed with somebody that is in your immediate circle, then that's a completely different thing where we now have to have a conversation, because now we have to confront some of the things that have happened, whatever the scenario was that we are in the process of forgiving, because we're going to move forward in this relationship. But if it's not, and it's somebody that what they do don't have no impact on you, then you need to keep it pushing, sugar, and don't even waste your energy or your breath trying to judge or anything about them and put your sole focus on you.
Absolutely. Stacy.
I was going to say that, if you come to me and you in a rage, I just got a lot going on in my life, right? So first of all, it's just certain things I'm not even going to engage in. So we teach kids here at Zecca that you have to be in control of your emotions, because your emotions are connected to a part of your brain that controls your thoughts. And when you lose control of your emotions, you stop thinking. So I'm going to realize that I say, if you come here rageful, you're not thinking right now. So I'm not even going to engage with you. I'm going to tell you, when you get yourself together and you can have a respectful conversation, you can come back and have a conversation with me. But right now, I'm not going to engage in that. And if it's something that's happening in Walmart, I'm certainly not getting ready to give somebody time that's not finna put money in my pocket. So I'm just going to walk away from you, and you can stand over there and have all the rages and meltdown that you want to have. The second thing I don't do is I don't take any of it personal, because your meltdown and whatever is going on with you, for you to communicate in this way, has everything to do with you. And if I make that about me, then that's going to, harvest some time with me that's going to take away and waste my time. So I don't take anything personal. It might be just the moment you're going through. I don't know what happened to you moments before you approached me or moments before I came into this space of this rage. So I'm always thinking about safety first. I got to keep myself safe. And then when I remove myself totally from it, I need to reset myself because I'm sure it did some type of emotional trigger for me. So I need to go somewhere and have a kumbaya moment, take a couple of deep breaths, flush it out of me and release it back into the world and not allow it to absorb me. And I don't do any of that with judgment. I just like to say, it's you. Like, what is it about you that make you communicate like that? I got to keep it off of me. And then I might give a 30-second thought to, is this person dealing with PTSD? Is it some type of mental illness? But, we tend to throw mental illness lightly now. Every time somebody's doing something that they can't regulate their emotions, we like to people that has a mental illness. And all of this is not a mental illness. Some of this is your need to just learn how to control your emotions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was going to say, if I could add something else to that, once I get, in situations like that, that's why I have to put a rope around Petty Betty, because Petty Betty wants to jump in and, say something. But if I can rope Petty Betty in, which I'm pretty good now at roping Petty Betty in, then I can pull out Praying Patty. Mm-hmm. And I will walk away from the situation and say, okay, well, Lord, just cover them because I don't know what's going on, but Lord, you do, and praying for them because it could be a mental illness. It could be that they had a bad day. It could be that their life is falling apart and in shambles, and so making sure that I pause me long enough to pray for the person, even if I don't know them as I'm, moving on with my day and not let Petty Betty jump in and, add to it.
Oh, there are definitely times when we're able to upset our own apple cart. I literally just was reading a quote yesterday and it said, how a person treats you is their karma and how you respond is yours. And I think that as we're discussing and dialoguing, we have to be in that space of being careful and cautious with how we treat people, definitely for our own safety. I will say this pandemic, I think we're all triggered by 1,000 things and we just never know which day we're going to literally fly off the handle or someone next to us is going to fly off the handle or someone is, you're on the highway and then someone, road rage begins to happen for, someone's following you or, peering into your car, looking at you when you get to a stoplight. There are just so many things that are happening today that we just don't fully understand or comprehend. So the goal of our conversation today in this show specifically is to help us manage and balance those things because oftentimes we can put ourselves in harm's way. When we come back after the break, I want to have just a little bit of insight from our guest today related to where do we go from here? We talked a lot about what it looks like to self-assess. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And how is it impacting you? But then the second side, the flip side to that is how is what you're doing impacting other people? And honestly, do you care? When we come back after the break.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back, everyone. Tips, tricks, hacks, self-help, call it whatever you want. When we are here at A Balanced Life, we are designing what we do to really tap into how do we become better. Stacey and Dr. Tierney are here today to guide us through some of the things that we may not identify and recognize as habits and behaviors that set us off. So I want to invite them in to talk to us just a little bit about how do you put a pin in it. As Dr. Tierney says, take a beat. As Stacy says, pause. How do you know when to check yourself? Jump right in.
You keep dealing with the same thing the same way, and you keep having the same issues with people, and the only thing that hasn't changed in those circumstances is you, then now you need to check in with yourself, because everybody that you engage with and interact with is not going to have the same identical problem. So it might be something in your character that's lacking that you need to adjust, and you keep getting this life test by people coming into your life triggering those moments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say similar, in all of our interactions that we have in life, we are the common denominator in all of them. So if you're finding a repeat issue or a repeat feeling, and sometimes, unfortunately, we don't know that it's something that we need to address until after the trigger or after the meltdown, but instead of brushing that thing under the rug or just saying like, oh, well, it's all right. Well, I'm over. I'm good. Take a minute to really, again, I go back to my aunt. Hey, Stephanie, I go back to her and say, okay, what was that? Why did you feel that way? What was going on, that led to that? Just asking yourself those questions and doing that introspective work can help you to figure out what's really going on with you, to really start seeing where you need to put a pin in things, or if it's some situations that you need to not engage in anymore, or some people that you need to not engage with anymore because those things or those people or those situations are bringing out, the worst in you and not the best in you.
I want to ask Stacey a question, because oftentimes we see these building blocks in our lives. Stacey, when you're working with children, there are some habits, some things that we should do in all stages of life. So when a child is with you from kindergarten, middle school, high school, and into young adulthood, what are some things that you should see in life that stabilize us from childhood to adulthood, that we should really say, I'm going to pack this in my balanced living toolkit, and I'm going to carry this along with me throughout my days?
Responsibility. Like, can you take responsibility for what you've done? Can you take responsibility for the actions or the choices that you made? I think we do kids a disservice when they make a choice that causes an adverse reaction, and then we make excuses for them and give reasons to why they did it, instead of holding them accountable to taking responsibility for whatever the action they've done, even if that action resulted into failure. I think teaching kids early that it's okay to fail, that it's okay to not do everything right, and that you should, give appropriate feedback to the failure and help them think through, help them develop that growth mindset where they can recognize, I didn't do my best at that, but here's some feedback that I can listen to and help to improve. That helps me take responsibility. That helps me, see how I can always grow from one moment to the next. And it just that's that one thing that you want to take into your adult life, that, hey, the world don't owe you anything. And when we don't do that, we set them up for failure to the point where they can't grow from it. And then they become unemployable. Then they blame everybody at the job for the reasons why they can't come in and make good decisions. So teach kids how to take responsibility.
I love that R word, responsibility. Dr. Tierney.
I'm going to give you two. I'm going to say compassion and forgiveness. Teaching children very, very early, right along with that responsibility and accountability piece, teaching children very early to see more than just themselves, to have compassion for others, to not be so self-centered that the only thing that they are preoccupied with is their toys, their good grades, because then it turns into, okay, well, my plan, my business, my pain, it turns into that we're feeding that me, my, and mine, and right along with that compassion piece, teaching children forgiveness very early, that when someone takes their toy in the sandbox or pushes them off of the side or whatever, whatever it is, even all the way down to the bullies, teaching them forgiveness very early so that they are not continually tormented by whatever happened, to them, that they're not carrying that throughout their lives, that they learn how to forgive quickly so that they can then move on, with their lives.
I wanted to ask you both your impression on the role that self-esteem plays in balancing behavior, because oftentimes people do or say things or respond or react in a certain way because of how they've been treated, whether it's been good or bad. What role does self-esteem play in creating balanced young people as well as balanced adults? Stacey?
Oh, that self-esteem is paramount. I mean, it's key because it starts with knowing who you are and believing in who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, and if your self-esteem is low, you'll believe whatever garbage people put on you and near you and in you. And so I have a girls group that we work with here at the school called Pearls, and we spend a lot of time working on helping them to build their self-esteem. One, starting with knowing just historically what is the plight of an African-American female, because this group is primarily African-American females. And we teach them that historical perspective to show what started to pour into who you are from the beginning. And then we talk about how you should take pride in yourself and believing in yourself, because your behaviors are impacted when you have low self-esteem and you don't see yourself as doing anything, then you won't do anything. You won't interact with anything. Your behaviors kick in because you don't have anything to be prideful for. You don't have anything to look up to. You don't have anything to label that respect towards for yourself, So self-esteem, if you don't have it, oh man, that can hold you back from being able to just do whatever. I think connect to your self-efficacy. It'll hold you back from believing in what you're able to bring to the table. So we got to put this self-esteem, build that in kids very early.
Dr. T.
Absolutely. So I'm reminded of something that Joyce Meyer often says: hurt people hurt people. So when our self-esteem is low, then we are hurting, on the inside, in our view of ourselves, what we think we are capable of, our own insecurities. So when our self-esteem is low, how we treat ourselves is how we're going to treat other people, and this is very evident in children in terms of the bullies. Oftentimes, if you find bullies, they're not very confident kids, they come from, difficult backgrounds often, or they have a parent that's, demeaning them. And so then they go and bully, a child to replicate the things that they're seeing to help them feel, to feel better. So when we're talking about this self-esteem piece, we can also look at it from that behavioral piece of whatever your self-esteem is, it's going to impact your behavior. It's going to impact the behavior of your children. So making sure that not only do our children, feel esteemed and they feel secure and they feel confident, but that also our teenagers and our adults, are feeling that way as well. And if you find that you are feeling insecure, we all have insecure moments, but if you're finding that more often than not, you're feeling less than, you're feeling like you're not enough, you're feeling insecure, then this is where I absolutely would tell you to seek the professional help of a coach or a therapist, because we have specific tools that can help you combat those insecure thoughts, those feelings of fear and lack that you have, so that you can build your confidence, so that you can move through life in a confident way, feeling esteemed.
In social media, on our phones and many of our devices, we have emojis. And I remember, in school, and we're teaching about temperament and behavior and all those things, they would put up the little chart and it would ask you, are you happy? Are you sad? How do you feel today? Why is it important to gauge your feelings? And for our audience who's watching, find your emoji. How are you feeling? Sometimes you need to do a self-check. Why is it important for us to gauge throughout the course of the day how we're doing, because how you wake up in the morning may not be where you are at midday, and then may not be where you are in the evening. And then whatever either of those are carries over sometimes into the next day, giving us, feelings of apathy or empathy or sympathy, or, feeling in some ways that we are just not capable. Why is temperament important in who we are and what we do? Stacey?
I tell my teachers every morning when the kids come in, we use something very similar to that. They have to check in, whether you use an emoji, whether you use Jamboard or something where you're able to have kids to state how they're feeling at that moment, right? Because 1,000 things can happen at home before you even get on the bus to come to school. And your mood regulates your thoughts and your behaviors. So if you come to school upset, and no one knows that, you had something happening to you before you even got to school, now you're not doing your work. Now you're not being productive. Now you're not being able to learn how to be a productive citizen. So we start dealing with issues that really ain't even the real issue. Something quick happened in the class and everybody assumed that that's what got you in that space when it really isn't. So checking into your emotions help you to recognize your triggers. And you're right. You should check in throughout the day, because your mood can go from happy, sad, mad. All of this is experiencing within the day. And at the end of the day, all of that is impacting the next thing or the next decision that you're having to make or the next task you're having to complete. And that's going to impact the quality of that decision or the quality of that task. So the only way you're going to regulate that so that you can stay productive is to be that in tune to, I was happy a few minutes ago and then this happened and now I'm feeling a little sad. Do I need to stay there though? Because if I know this was what made me sad, then I can put another way of reacting to it when it comes down my path again. So now it's not making me sad. So that is the key to regulating yourself so that you don't get stuck. I think we get stuck when we stop checking in and knowing how we're really feeling and why we're feeling like that. So check those emotions all day into your bed. All day.
Absolutely. And let it inform what you do. So if I know that I'm in a funky space, then I know I need a minute. I need a timeout. I need a pause, before I go. And I don't care what may be scheduled or planned, or, I may take that 5 minutes before I walk into whatever that thing is, because I know that if I walk into it with this funky headspace, then whatever it is, it's not going to turn out the way that I ideally want it to be. And this could be professional. This could be personal. This could be a conversation. This could be, a party. This could be anything, so making sure that you're touching in with yourself, it helps to make sure that you are interacting with individuals, with situations in the way that you would like to, that you're showing up as your best self. And if you are in a space where you can't show up as your best self, that's when it's okay. Well, guys, I don't think I can go. I need to sit down. I need to quarantine myself, before I, be triggered or any of those things. It's totally okay to decline the invitation. It's totally okay, to not go and take a minute, for yourself. So making sure that you are allowing the information that you receive as you're assessing, where you are and assessing your emotion, allowing that information to inform how you move throughout your day.
When we come back after the break, I want to give my reflections.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland. Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can tell, balancing your behavior oftentimes is difficult because we cannot always pinpoint what made us do what we just did. And we oftentimes are not able to put a pin in what made us feel the way we just felt. But there does come a time when we have to sit back and do some self-reflection and, take a look at who we're in the process of becoming, but also looking at what shaped us into who we are today. Attitudes and behaviors are about how you feel and what you do and how you respond to those things that come into your space. But most importantly, it's also how you go into a space. We've heard a lot today about what it means to regulate who you are so that you can leave a place or space better than you found it. So today, if you're being challenged and you're not really certain of where you need to be and things are not looking quite as rosy as you believe they should, I hope that the one thing that you caught today was that life isn't perfect and no one is expecting you to be. The key is being able to marry all of the things together that we face on an ongoing basis from childhood to adulthood. We are in the process of being. We're in the process of doing. We're in the process of accepting responsibility and ownership for a single entity, which is self. Today, go out and do better and be better, that your life can be reflective of who you want the world to see, but then also who you want others to become from having been in your space. Thank you all so much for watching A Balanced Life here at Black Star Network. Bye now.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.